So when I say the name Aphrodite, what's the first thing you picture? I'm guessing it's some serene, beautiful goddess, maybe rising out of the ocean. But what if I told you that image is basically a PR campaign? We're about to get into the real story of Aphrodite, and trust me, it's way more complex and frankly, way more shocking.
For pretty much all of us, she's the poster child for love, beauty, pleasure, you know the drill. She's that gentle, smiling figure you see in all the Renaissance paintings, the one who embodies romance. And yeah, that's the Aphrodite we think we know.
But the ancient Greeks, they knew a completely different goddess, one who was a whole lot more powerful, infinitely more complex, and honestly, kinda terrifying. So let's start peeling back those layers of pretty paintings and old myths and find the real Aphrodite hiding underneath. To really get who she was, we have to start with the story, or more accurately, the stories that everyone knows. Because right from the very beginning, nothing about Aphrodite is simple, not even her birthday.
Okay, so you've got two competing origin stories. The poet Homer, he tells us she's the daughter of Zeus, king of the gods, and a titaness named Dione. Pretty standard stuff for a god. But then you've got the poet Hesiod, who gives us a story that is way more, well, metal. He says she was born from sea foam that frothed up around the severed genitals of the sky god Uranus after his own son Cronus cut them off and chucked them into the ocean. And yep, you heard that right. Two completely different births for the same goddess. One is all neat and tidy, the other is just shockingly primal. That major contradiction kind of gives the game away, right? It hints that maybe Aphrodite wasn't originally Greek at all, and when you start tracing her family tree, you find a much older, much fiercer goddess who made her way to Greece from the ancient Near East.
Scholars can actually trace Aphrodite's cult all the way back to the Phoenician goddess Astarte, and even further back to the great Mesopotamian goddess Ishtar, also known as Inanna. And the parallels? They're impossible to ignore. Both were goddesses of love and procreation, sure, but also of war. Ishtar was called the Queen of Heaven. One of Aphrodite's most important titles was Urania, which means heavenly. Both were even considered patrons of prostitutes. This is no coincidence. This was a direct cultural import, a hand-me-down goddess.
And that whole warrior thing, it wasn't just some forgotten detail. In places like hyper-militaristic Sparta and on the island of Cythera, where her cult was ancient, the oldest statues of her literally show her armed for battle. This wasn't the soft, gentle goddess of love we picture. This was a powerful, formidable, and frankly, dangerous deity. So the Greeks inherited this incredibly complicated goddess of both love and war, and you can see them trying to make sense of all her contradictions. They ended up worshiping her in tons of different ways, reflecting all the different and often conflicting faces of passion itself. The philosopher Plato even tried to clean this up by basically splitting her in two. He said, okay, you've got Aphrodite Urania, the heavenly one. She inspired a pure spiritual kind of love. And then you have Aphrodite Pandemos, which means common to all. She was the goddess of raw, earthly, physical desire. It was a neat way to separate the sacred from the profane, but at the end of the day, both were still Aphrodite.
But it gets even darker than that. Just look at some of her other titles from cults across Greece. Aria, the warlike. Androphonos, which means killer of men. Timborikos, the gravedigger. Even Anoisia, the unholy one. I mean, come on. These are not titles for a sweet and cuddly goddess of romance. They point to a power that is deeply connected to life and to death and to the violent chaos of pure passion.
And just when you think you've got her pinned down, you find out that on Cyprus, one of her biggest worship centers, they worshipped a male version named Aphroditus. The statues show a figure with a female body, but also a beard and male anatomy. It just goes to show you that for some of her ancient followers, the force she represented completely transcended our ideas of gender. Now, this contradictory nature isn't just in her weird titles, it is all over her myths. Her stories paint a picture of a goddess who could be incredibly generous to those she favored, but absolutely terrifying and cruel to anyone who disrespected her.
Just look at the famous story that kicks off the Trojan War. There's a squabble over a golden apple for the fairest. So what does Aphrodite do? She bribes the mortal judge, Paris. Her bribe, the most beautiful woman on earth. Let's be clear. Aphrodite's vanity and her gift directly lead to a brutal 10-year war that burned cities to the ground and got countless heroes killed. But then, on the flip side, she could be a true force for creation. You've probably heard of the sculptor Pygmalion. He was so devoted to her, he fell in love with a statue he carved of her. And Aphrodite, seeing how pious he was so touched that she brought the statue to life for him. For her followers, passion could literally create life.
But it could just as easily destroy it. Take the story of the young prince Hippolytus. He completely scorned Aphrodite, choosing to worship only Artemis, the virgin goddess of the hunt. He basically rejected love and desire altogether. To Aphrodite, this was a massive insult, so she cursed his stepmother to fall madly in love with him, a forbidden passion that led directly to false accusations, suicide, and Hippolytus getting dragged to his death by his own horses. The message could not be clearer. You ignore the power of passion at your own peril.
So, the big question is, how in the world do we get from this complex, armed, life and death wielding goddess to the calm, gentle figure we all picture today? Well, the answer lies in centuries of art and culture, which slowly but surely sanded down all her rough edges.
Her journey starts here, in her earliest forms in Greece. The art shows a powerful, often armed goddess, a clear reflection of her Near Eastern roots as a deity of both love and war. She was a force you respected, and you feared her.
But then, during the classical period, everything changed. The sculptor Praxiteles creates his Aphrodite of Knidos. It was the first life-size nude female statue, and it was a total sensation. Suddenly, the focus shifted away from her power and onto her physical perfection. She became the new ideal of female beauty, and her warrior side just started to fade away. And then, the Renaissance finished the job. When Botticelli painted The Birth of Venus, using her Roman name, he locked in the image we all know today. This is not a warrior goddess. This is a delicate, almost passive figure, completely scrubbed clean of her violent birth, her dark titles, and her terrifying rage. This is Aphrodite sanitized for your protection. So when you put it all together, you have to ask yourself, was Aphrodite really the goddess of love, or was she something much, much bigger? The divine embodiment of passion itself, in all of its creative, destructive, beautiful, and terrifying forms. A power that can build families and start wars. A force that, as the ancient Greeks understood all too well, can never, ever be tamed.